All right, it's now 3, so let's start a bit on time. So welcome everybody to Business Central Manufacturing Exchange. Hopefully you guys were with us 2 days ago when we did the kickoff, and now we're gonna start focusing on a specific topic from the our favorite part of Business Central, manufacturing. And today we're gonna talk about shop floor specifically. So with me today is Martin. Martin's gonna also be leading the discussion on the topic, and we're also joined by 3 other ISVs. So lots of things to talk about, lots of experience shared between the people who will be talking today. Uh, we have Ben from Naveksa, we have Matt Woodhouse from Clever Dynamics, and we have Mark Hamblin from InsightWorks. So there will be 3 presentations, more or less 30 minutes long each. And then afterwards, we'll try to get more information out of the people who presented, or the people on the panel. So we'll have some kind of panel discussion, which Martin would lead. And also this would be the perfect time for anybody in the audience to ask questions. So couple quick reminders, everybody in the audience will be on mute. But obviously you're encouraged to ask questions, and that's why we have the chat function. So as mentioned during the Q&A, during the panel, we encourage people to type in their questions, and we'll try to ask them to the people on the panel. If you have very specific questions, maybe whatever, regarding pricing, regarding how reseller agreements work with the ISVs who will be presenting today, then that we can kind of ask after the session. So we'll be connecting you guys to the speakers of today. So without further ado, let's get this started. So first off, let's get Ben Korsgaard from Naveksa. Ben, I'm gonna make you a presenter. And Ben, you are on mute. You're still on mute, Ben, if you're saying something.
Yeah, now I'm unmuted. So you can see my screen, you can hear what I say, I hope. Right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm hearing you. Yep.
Oh, that's perfect. Then I'll start. Thank you very much for participating in this presentation here. My name is Ben Korsgaard. I come from Naveksa. I'm the founder of Naveksa, and I'll present to you a short description of our shop floor solution for Business Central. You'll not see that many files. I will show you our application instead of. So what is it? It's a tool for production planning and operator self-service execution at the shop floor, ultimately paperless. This is basically what we have done. So what is it we have done? If you look at Business Central Manufacturing, basically it has not changed in functionality since it was released back in year 2000 or so as Navision Manufacturing. So basically this means in the standard system, it means paper operated procedures, producing a shop floor package with a material picking list and routing sheet and labor tickets and a lot of other stuff. So you can say there was a lot of manual work and processes involved in doing all this shop floor execution. Time consuming at least. So what it is we think we have done is that with our solution shop floor implemented, we have reduced a lot of manual procedures. We have implemented self-service operations and so on. So basically you should be able to more efficient at that state. So this is basically what we have done What I will show you now is that I'll show you some of the application or what it is we got, because it takes place in Business Central as a separate app, or basically two separate apps. What we have here is our shop floor planning solution, and basically it has it's two applications working together, but we have what is called a shop floor planning solution. And when I click on that shop floor planning, I get an overview of all my production resources. At the top level, it could be my factory total. Now I sit here as a planner. I'm going to plan my execution. So quite naturally, I would like to look at my resources. So it could be factory total, and factory total could be broken down into different work centers. It could be production line 1, machining, production line 2, packing, packaging, and so on. Probably you all know everything about that. So, but we go to the lowest level, we have what is called machine centers or resources. So as a planner, I sit here and say, what should I care about today? I would look at the machining. But it's very important with this planning hierarchy to say at what level do I want to plan today. So, and if I click at the machine center 100, then I get a screen. This screen, or what you see here, is very much inspired by McDonald's. McDonald's, they have very simple but very efficient order handling systems in place. And this is basically our inspiration. At McDonald's, you have to merge desk counter sales and drive-in orders and still run a very efficient business in terms of servicing customers. So what we have done is that when we look at this work center 100, which is a resource, then we have subdivided all the work at this resource into what is called running orders. Running orders are orders being processed at the moment. A machine or a person or whatever works on the orders. Then we have a section called waiting. And waiting orders are all the orders which are ready to be worked at this work center 100. So you can imagine all the items, they are standing on a pallet in front of the machine and ready to be worked at when resources come available. And then we have a section called arriving. So basically, this is the main idea behind our system: running, waiting, and arriving orders. And you can also say that maybe it's not so much McDonald's, but what we have done here is more common. We have applied some common queuing principles. This is the one screen. This is the planner screen. I'll come back to that. The other side of this application, when the planner has done all what he's supposed to do, you will see that in a minute or two, is that we go to the workshop and look at the operator's screen. So the operator screen, it looks very similar to the planning screen. And here you also, this is basically the operator screen. It can run on a PC, it can run on a touch operated tablet, or it runs on a it runs on a device user model in Business Central. So the idea here is that the operator wants to start a machine or himself at a specific job, and then he chooses the one he wants and then say okay. So what he gets is a similar the subsections: orders processing, orders queuing, and future orders. This is basically the thing we have done. It shall be easy for the operators to operate the screen. So there's only one instruction to the operator. If you do not have anything to do, you must pick up the first line in the queuing section. Then we will deliver at our best as a company. This is the idea. And then I must remove this stuff up here because then the next instruction to him is that some of the function buttons to the right gets dark blue, and it means that this order has instructions, drawings, other notes or instructions to execute the job. So ultimately, we have produced what is called paperless production, if you want. This is what we are going to look at. If we go back to the planning screen, we have certain facilities here where you can see in the running, if we look at the running section, we have some status information. This job here is started. Who is running this job here? This is a batch ID. We could look that up. It's machining. It was started, I believe this is today at this time here. Could be many operators on the same job. We have more information here. We can see what is the load on the capacity load on this machine here. It's also interesting. And what we do here is that we look at that's something which is unique to our solution, is that opposed to standard business central manufacturing, you have capacity available in the past. We work with available capacity from this very minute. And then, so it could be that you have, if I look at the months, it seems that we are 75% loaded. If I try to take all overdue load to day, then I will see some very heavy figures here. This is 454. I can get that represented graphically also if I want to see that. I can drill down to all the details in this display screen here, and so this is very good information for the production planner to get the capacity overview. If you notice here, we have something which is called priority, and this here is the where the planner assigns priority to an order. Normally, we have a default routine for sorting these order lines, and it could be in production order due date, could be starting date, it could be operation starting date, or other criteria. But this here is something where the production planner sets the sequence, the execution sequence. So we do this by assigning priorities. When the planner works with our solution, he has all information available about the specific order. It could be item attributes. He can look the production order up, can look at the bump routing, drawings, priority, assign priority, can make notes to the people and then he can say, okay, I have a job scheduled for work center 100. I want to subdivide it into these two machines. So we operate with something we call assign resources. This is basically what we do. If we have customers saying that this is, we like what you got here, but don't you have a graphical solution as well? No, we do not have a graphical solution, but we know some people who has made a nice graphical solution, and then we refer to the visual production scheduler or the visual advanced production scheduler in where we have a cooperation with NETRONIC. And these two things work hand in hand. And the really nice story about this here, compared to many other solutions in the marketplace, is that if I go to actions, when I have done all my drag and drop here and to make a perfect plan, then I can go here and say save. And so I do not need any night runs or batch runs or other bad stuff to come back here and say, okay, now I have a different sequence for my planning. So these two systems goes very well hand in hand as standard. If we go, now I have to look at the time. If I turn back to the execution screen, then the screen contains a lot of information. We'll not go into all the details with that. We keep other more detailed demos as well. But the idea here is, as I have said once, is that if the operator doesn't have anything to do, then I will have to start the first line here. Then I can click on all the dark blue things here, and I can look at the bill of material, for instance. Do I have all the components to produce this stuff here? No, it does. It looks horrible today. I'm in a mess here. I could, if I want the paper, I could print the material request if I wanted to. I could have a look at the routing, and then here we see all the routing, or the 3 routing steps needed to complete this order here with all the information. I'll take another one here. I have more becoming. I'll take this one here. Where has it gone? Here we have one good example, a lot of dark blue buttons. So I could look at an order note, and here you can see this is a general order comment. Note the delivery date must be kept. Order must be delivered including papers. Here we have notes and link, and here we have a communication system. Shall I call the customer about something? And here we have established a communication system between the workshop and the planner, and then I can choose a recipient, and then it will pop up on his screen, and then he can write back to the operator. So we have, that was the order note. We have process note we operate with, and what we do here is that we are using everything is we use from standard Business Central. We operate with routing or routing comments. You must execute strictly to this here, and it could be a video or a YouTube video. We have customers using small video instructions to show how it's done, or we could add routing links to this here, where we today we go. It's a long way, but we go to a SharePoint file to show how the end result should look like. I'll go back here, and then we also have what is called routing tools. We use the standard, not quite the standard routing file in or tooling file in Business Central, but this is very good information. So this is basically it. We can, I'll not show it because of the time. I can show drawings also, wherever they come as routing or order links or item links, or they are shared, they are put in a shared folder and so on. But then the process start, I need to start an order. I want to start with post materials, and then here I will get a list of what I want to issue and so on. I can choose location bin. This here could be lot control items. So if we have run with traceability and so on, I could, but then I also have a facility. We have a small solution which can be attached to this. It's included in the application. This is our time and attendance. So if we, for instance, say here, we can see that we have some orders running at the moment. We also have some orders not running. Perhaps the people are sick, or they are helping a colleague, or whatever they are doing. But we also have an integrated solution here for clock in and clock out. And then we could say this Anna Grete here, she was not well, so she left the company a little bit too early today. And then we'll see that that the light goes out. It seems it takes a little bit of time. It's because of the webinar. Takes a little bit time. So now we can see we have still orders processing, but they are not active at the moment. So we can let her. She was not that ill, so we'll let her come back again. No, that was sick. Yeah. So basically, this is it. The Shopfloor operator terminal is very simple to use. At least it's very simple to understand for operators. And we have spent a lot of time talking with operators. Do you understand the screen here? What should we change, and so on. What I want to mention also, we have integrated quality control. I'll not show you today, but what we have done compared to other solutions is that it's integrated at the individual routing step level. So there's a comprehensive setup for doing quality control if operators are forced to record some measurements and so on. What I could do here is that I could start a job. I could also make output on a job, and you can see here everything is meant to be operated finger touch operated. And you can also see here that this here is the end job screen, where we have an operator who has started on a job, needs to complete something here. It could be a single operation, it could be multiple operations, as we also work with bundling of orders and one operator, many machines, and so on. But today I'll do this here, end operation, 125. Do I have any scrap? Do I want to print a pallet label? Should I put them direct on a location and bin in my warehouse? I could add some additional information for the people who is doing the invoicing, that this was packed so and so, and a lot of other things. So I will end this here, and then it will go away from the list of orders processing. And now it will move to the orders queuing if there were additional routing operations. So that's basically easy to operate, and the communication between the workshop and the planner, it can be done automatically and so on. So people understand this screen here. So our solution is basically built on a comprehensive setup. We do not like programming. So what we have here is that the Shopfloor is based on a lot of questions where you, so to speak, tailor the application to the wanted use. And it's delivered with a setup wizard where you are taking through all the questions and all that stuff. But if we take a quick look at our setup, we have a lot of setup questions, and this is basically the implementation of the solution. So here we have for the client, we need to say what orders do we want to plan? Is it just the released orders? Is it released or firm planned orders? Where should we put the first operation? Do we want to show the setup and run? Some companies do not want to show their standard times. Placement, we work with send ahead, default sorting date for when we do the sequencing. Who can start a job and enter a job? And so it continues all the way down here, where we talk, in general, we talk quality assurance, we talk materials, how should check materials in planning. It might not be a good idea to change priority on an order with shortages. So here you can say, yes, it should be blocked. No, we do not need to block it. It should only send a message that you do not have the materials, or do not do anything. So can you start a job without issuing materials and so on? And so it continues. And then we have all the print functions. It's quite easy. It's just putting a standard or your own developed report for pallet labels or job tags or serial number or lot labels and so on. Just attach it to here, then everything is working. Then we have a few things for the planner, and we have a lot of some things for the general setup, for instance, of where are our drawings and so on. When we have done that, we so to say configure our display screens, and we do that by going here to the shop field select, and then we are shown all the fields which are available in the system. And then you can just put a tick mark to the field you want to be presented on our displays, and you also say in what order or the column sequence horizontal you want the things to appear in. And then a nice feature down here, we always apply 10 additional customer fields, because it's our experience that all customers, they have something special for them. It could be plate thickness, it could be color of an item, it could be a material specification, an important material specification, and a lot of other stuff which are hidden somewhere in the BC database. And then they say, we would like to have this, to see this on our shop floor screens. And then they have 10 fields here they can define on their own, and without programming, add them to the display screens. So so it goes with a lot of other things, and there's much more to this setup. Could be that you do not like what we call the things. So if you say that orders processing, we want to call them orders running in our company, then you just change the text here, and then it will be changed on all our display screens. And now I have spent all my time, and fortunately I have also managed to say what I wanted to say. So I'll go back to this here and show the last one here. A good demo of our shop floor solution normally takes an hour to get behind the scenes of some of all the things. So you are more than welcome to request a more detailed demo, where we go a little bit more into the details and behind the scenes. So with this here, I would thank you for listening, and I have kept the time, I believe. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Bent. Again, you will be hearing from Bent later during the panel discussion. So right now, let's shift over to Matt from Clever Dynamics. So let me make Matt the presenter.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you and see your screen.
Excellent, excellent. Always a good start. Well, thank you everybody for joining today's session. So I'm Matt Woodhouse, so representing from Clever Dynamics, our Clever MES product. So first of all, what is it? MES, Manufacturing Execution Systems, as I'm sure you'll know. So it's around the live capture and scheduling of production orders, which I think having a live processing and capture of statuses of production orders is really important, because it means that those last minute changes to the production plan are less disruptive, because you can move things around before they actually hit this is the one I want to work on now. So I think having that live update is an important part of a shop floor, rather than pushing pieces of paper around. Obviously, talking of paper, part of the whole process, and very similar to what Bent was saying, is that moving away from issuing bits of paper, drawings, let's feed this from a screen and drive those instructions without the need for paper. Real-time transactions is also important for stock as well as progress. So customer service has been able to see where my order is through the process is really important. But if you're using scanning technology for inventory, you have to have that production order completed and into stock before you can then move it to the warehouse. So having that real-time processing is a really key part of this. What we can do in MES is capture actual times as well. We have a clock on, clock off. I'm sure there's a theme we'll see through today to capturing what we do, what we actually did. Business Central is somewhat limited in that you have to do it retrospectively, which isn't always great. So the software runs on touchscreen devices. So it's runs through a browser. Typically, most people tend to go and use an Android tablet because of the cost. Not in a ruggedized case, for instance. And if one accidentally gets broken, it's not the end of the world for them. We capture operate as well, so it's not just machine centers. We're including a new entity, the actual operator that worked on that particular production order, and it may be more than one operator as well. We've included features for byproducts as well. So we find that certain industries, if it's metal, for instance, and you've got scrap metal and you want to put that back into stock and include that in the production order and cost that, but also trace that inventory. And then there's certain industries where naturally you're producing a second byproduct, and being able to manage that through the system as standard is included. Because of some of the information we're capturing, it also gives great data for reporting on OEE as well. It also uses a Microsoft device license. So from a user licensing perspective, it's more economical than using a premium Business Central license. And it's also extensible via Business Central AL code. So even though you look at it, it's all in a browser, you can actually drive the look and feel from BC AL code. So you can tweak it if you want to. And we've got some kind of working examples as how to do that as well for your developers. One of the things that we were keen on, because this is an app that sits kind of alongside BC, is making the installation of this as seamless as possible to the end users. So if you have BC, and you can go and do this now, there's a trial, a 30-day trial that you can install. So you search in the app source for Clever NES. And then it'll ask you to install a default configuration, and that will look at what machine centers you've got within the setup and create that for you automatically, and then put a default setting in there. Then you have to click on register application, and this is a Microsoft requirement that you have to give permissions for the MES app to communicate to your Business Central. So it's just a click on accept, and this basically creates an instance of MES on Azure as a web app, and that just happens dynamically. And you then have a URL within BC, and it shows you the link. You click on it, and you can open that in a browser, be it a tablet or a PC, and away you go. You start then communicating with BC straight from the tablet. So really easy to set up. You can get this installed and going within about 3-4 minutes. So let's get straight onto the demo. So we're in BC, and what I'm going to do is go and create myself a release production order. I'm in a door company here, by the way. And let's say I want this the 28th. Let me just refresh that. And because on this environment, I've also got the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler, just to make it easy to spot this, I'm going to go and make this, should go down here, so make this red. Okay. So that's created my production order. Now what I'm going to do is just go into my Visual Production Scheduler. I'll create a new simulation. So with the advanced, we can have multiple simulations open at any one time. And if I just zoom into this week, the coloring I've got here, because this is based on a door company, that's the color of the doors that we're making. So that can help me, especially around my painting area, so I can reschedule them if I want to. But I want to go and look for the production order we just created. So I'm going to change it to my production order view. Zoom out a smidge. And there it is, that red one. So let's now schedule that. Drop that in there, that scheduled it for me. I'm happy with that, close that. And then let's publish that and go and push that out into BC. So I mentioned before that MES, once we installed it, would have had a hyperlink. So I'll click onto my alternate tab here, my browser, and I can see here it's a link into MES. And the shortcut here is starting at the very top level. So we have the ability to define devices within MES. So a device being a physical piece of hardware. And the reason why we do this is that you may have one device per machine center, but you might have one device that supports multiple machine centers. So you can configure the devices within the system to say which devices are aligned to which machine center. So if I went into my final assembly, for instance, I can see my list of production orders that I've got in final assembly. But if I go back and look in CNC, then it's asking me to choose which machine center am I actually using. So you've got the ability to build this structure between them. So let's go into my circular saw. I'm going to start cutting my doors. And here it's showing me, in effect, I've only got one production order. I've gone straight into it. And I'm in setup mode here. And I'm the default operator, John. I haven't started anything yet, so maybe I'm the tool setter. I can see my production order and what the product code and description we're making and how many we need to make, etc. Then what we can do is we can click on start, and that gets the clock running. So what we see at the bottom here is the clock is counting, and therefore, as I'm doing that process, it's capturing my actual times. I can also see my components that's linked to the this particular production order. And the idea, this is all touch screen. We're trying to keep this as visual and as chunky as possible so the operators with their big fingers can use this easily. Now the components screen here is split between two lots. The top bit being the raw materials that are manually flushed. So I'm going to have to confirm what I've used, and the components at the bottom, I need to use them, but they're back flushed. So when I select the quantity to post, it comes up on the right-hand side with a box that I can press with my fingers and adjust how many and choose that it's that particular material and post it and process the raw materials that way. We can also pass notes through to the system and also pick up notes as well. And in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop that and go back. I think of choose a different production order, and let's choose the bottom one here. There's a one we just created. So I'll go back into it. So I'm going to select my operator and start this one. Do exactly what we did before, start it, clock's running. I might want to add another operator. So if I need some help a bit later down the line, I press Sarah and she will then have a separate time running compared to my time. So you're capturing the actuals of the people on that particular job. So what I've also got as well is on the right hand side here, I've got grade and FSC certified showing. So these are what we call clever attributes. So we can have up to 5 defined attributes for the production order. And this is basically giving me the ability to capture some additional information as I'm going through the processing of this production order. So if I press grade, I've predefined what the options are on grade. So I'll press A, and then is it FS certified? I'm looking at the raw materials, the wood, yes, that is FSC certified. We can also do things like the instructions, top left. I'll use my mouse maybe so you can see where I'm going. And that can then link to any external PDFs that we might have with work instructions that we want to provide for the users. So when we, so we're in setup time. So as an operator, I finish that. I press the stop button. I choose a reason why I'm stopping this. So I might say, well, actually, we're going on a break. Press OK. And it changes color. And the reason why it changes color, and you can define these colors, is that if you've got 10, 15, 20 devices out on the shop floor, at the glance of an eye, you can easily see what status that production order is running. You can obviously see that back in BC, but if you're the supervisor and you're out on the shop floor, it gives a clear indication as to what's going on with that. So we've come back from our break, we restarted, the clocks carry on. And this is posting capacity ledger entries to the production order in the background. And against those operators, you can define costs as well. So I'm going to stop that. I'm going to say, yeah, my setup is now complete. Hit OK. And that's now done, and that's now ready for me to start processing against that. You can see Sarah and me on there. Now, if Sarah was just helping me, I can remove her. Maybe I could remove myself and add the actual person doing the operating. We talked about byproducts. So let's start this now. So the job's running, it's gone green, and we're now actually processing on this production order. So if I go back now into BC whilst that's running and look at my production order. And we go into our routing. I can kind of see what's going on in the background. So this top circular saw here, where we were running, I can see that we've captured the attributes, and on those attributes, on the setup of the routing, we can define how we want to deal with those. So I might say, perhaps the first operation we want to capture certain information, but I don't want to show it in subsequent operations. So do not display. Display only, let somebody else present that data and just feed that down the line to other people. Optional, as it says, I can enter it if I want to. Mandatory persistent means that I have to enter it and it is going to pass that attribute down the line. Mandatory per entry means that we have to capture it every time we do an output. And mandatory same value, a bit like dimensions, that we stipulate in the routing what dimension we want them to capture. That might be QC pass or certain QC results as to whether that's good or bad. What I can also see on the routing line here is the quantity available to start. So this is what's driving MES as to, is this routing line ready for me? So once I process output against this, so if I, for instance, process 3 and process 3 output, it will pass 3 down to the next operation. That also works with parallel routing, so it understands where it needs to go and passes that information down the line. We also have output multiple. Now, there might be scenarios where very often you're building, let's say, a pallet at a time or a box at a time, and you only want to do your output and generator label when you've built that pallet or when you've built that case or carton. So we can define against the operation the multiple. And what that means is that when I come to do the output, I don't need to tell it the quantity, it defaults to that. So we just hitting the output button, out comes a label, job done. We can also specify the number of operators that are needed at this particular operation for setup and also for runtime. And I can see here that this is currently running on flat 01 and it's got a status of running. So if I go back to my MES screen, let's say we've made some of them. So if I go and say on my box output screen here, 5, and I say output, so that then processes 5. I go back to BC and just refresh that. I can see that my available to start is reduced to 5 and my next operation has 5. And you can choose how in the setup as to whether you're allowed to pass those numbers down the line. So a bit like send ahead quantities in BC on the routings, that if you do want the next operation to be able to start as you're making them, that's fine. If you don't, then you have to wait until it's complete. I can scrap here as well. And let's say I'm scrapping 1. You can define whatever reasons you want. So if I say it's damaged, okay. And it does a standard BC output, so it's still saying I still need 5 more to finish this job. Obviously it's standard BC, so you know, if you only want to finish 4 more, that's fine. So let's say I'm going to make 4. I hit output. I then say stop, I'm done. Well, before I do that, actually what I can also do is switch. So if I've got, if I'm working on multiple machines, I can hit on switch and I'll see and be able to choose the machine I'm working on. If one of the other machines is running, those cogs actually go red and start to, and they visually spin round as well. So it's captured my, still got my attributes, which we entered at the setup point. So I say stop. That's now complete. Again, the rest of these processes here are a list of stop codes that you can enter as a user. The other thing to note as well is that if I close, whilst it's running, if I close the browser, you know, if the power goes off, it's not a problem. It understands the status where we are. All the, you know, the timings, etc., all dealt with back at the server end. So it doesn't matter the fact that the actual tablet, you know, if you turn it off, and you can set a timeout. So if they forget to end the shift, it will just log it out automatically at the end. Or if you end shift, obviously it stops the time. So let's say that's complete, hit OK. And that's now finished that job, and it's taking me back to the list of jobs that I need to do. So that's presented in start date time order. Obviously, we use VAPs to schedule when we want those, presenting me the list here. You can configure it so that at the machine center level, you can define whether they're allowed to see a list or whether they just get presented with the next production order. So, you know, it depends how much you trust those people to say, yeah, go and choose the best one next, or I'll tell you exactly which one I need you to do next. Just go back one more. Back even. So that's the basic interface. You know, we've tried to keep the interface as simple and as clean and crisp as possible to try and make it, you know, simple for the operators to use. If we just go and explore now a bit more of the setup, just come back here. So some of the features we have set up our operators that we saw, and we can link those to machine centers. And the reason why we link them to machine centers is so that we can then define, you know, that these are typically types of operators. So we might have a machine center for operators, a machine center for tool setters, if there's different costs that we want to attribute to those, and we define that here. We also have the attributes, fairly straightforward, that you define a list of attributes and the values that can be defined against them. So that's, you know, what you saw appear in the screen before. So let me go back to my slides. Oh no, sorry, one more thing. just show a bit more the setup on the machine centers. So on the machine centers, we have an extra tab here, and this gives us some options as to how the behavior of that particular machine center will behave. So the first, what I was talking about, the presentation, do we allow the user to select off the list, or are they just automatically presented with it? How do we want to sort those production orders? Start date time, most likely, but you can do it by production order as well. Processing type. So if you're using make to order, for instance, and you've got therefore multi-line production orders, then what you can do is process a multi-line production order in the same screen, in the same output. So that means that if you're pulling together the same types of products on multiple orders, you can do that in one process. And when you're doing things like consumption, you can consolidate that onto one screen as well, which is the next bit. You can also split the consumption out as well individually. Whether we want to see it on the screen or not, is this particular process something that we want to capture on the MES screens, and whether we want to confirm an operator on the output. So, perhaps only when I hit I've done an output, it comes up and says, and who are you? Now that the operator kind of list that comes up, you can either have it as the push button, like we saw, or you can have that with a passcode as well. So there's some security around ensuring who did it. We can pull, this option allows me to pull production orders that are at the work center level as well. And then production groups is a feature that's then for extensibility. So if there's ways that you want to group your production orders outside of standard, we've got some code in the background that allows you to put your own AL code into that, and then the screens will respect that. And this is basically saying, am I grouping on this particular machine center? Okay, so that's it for the demo. Just go back to my slides. So in summary, it's touchscreen based, chunky, friendly interface, very quick to set up. As I say, you can go and get a trial, 30-day trial. It'll take you a few minutes to set up as long as you do that default configuration and the application security, just authorize the application. It's real-time processing. The MES interface is provided by Azure Web Apps, so it's very scalable if you have a lot of machines out there. It's extensible, so if you do want to change and add some extra fields in there, you can do that. And it's running on device licensing, so it's obviously competitive from a pricing perspective. In terms of pricing, it's £55, €55. We kept that the same. It goes up, it goes down, but we'll take the hit on that, or $75. That's per device. Remember, a device could operate multiple machines. And then you also need your device license from Microsoft on top of that. So it's in app source, as I said. There's other clever applications we have in there as well, handheld and shipment management and things like that. They're very useful applications. And if you want to know more, there's plenty of materials out there we have on the Clever Dynamics website. We've got all of the applications documented on the Clever Dynamics document site. We've got lots of YouTube videos. There's Twitter and LinkedIn feeds, and app source, of course, to go and pick up that product. So that's me done. Thank you all for listening, and I'll hand back.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your presentation. Now let's get Mark as presenter. There we go.
Excellent. You can hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you and see your screen. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, it's nice to see this international flavor. We've got all these different accents coming on all the time, and now you get the Canadian accent, eh? So Mark here, of course, and I'm going to take you through a little bit of our Shopfloor application called Shopfloor Insight. So I won't cover this off. We covered this off in the intro, but we do have, European and North American operations, and we work through our partner network. What's important really is what we provide to our partners and our customers, of course. And, there's a whole bunch of applications, and end-to-end is what we call it. Today, of course, we're focused on the Shopfloor Insight application. So what is that? And sorry, I'll be speaking a little quickly because 20 minutes is a pretty short period of time to get everything done. But Shopfloor data collection. So really, if you had to describe it in sort of one sentence, it's barcoded labor collection. Right, so the idea is we scan barcodes to collect labor, but we don't have to. We also have the ability to go completely paperless. So we have customers going paperless, some people using barcodes. It's really up to you on how you want to set that up. And some of the capabilities that we have available. So we do have time and attendance and payroll integration. So what that means is we can have employees clock in and out for the day, log their break time, sick time, whatever you need, including in the office, like office personnel can use it. And we'll calculate overtime or various payroll rules and generate information you can send to your payroll system. And that includes shift scheduling. So if you have somebody working afternoons for 2 weeks and then they move to evenings for 2 weeks after that, we can manage that scheduling as well. And that ties into alerts, if they didn't show up or they showed up late, we know what shift they were working and those sorts of things. So it's a fairly comprehensive time and attendance solution as well, comparable to any sort of standalone or best of breed time and attendance solution. Now, what I mentioned earlier was the barcoded labor collection. So that's the easiest way to use it. And for the barcode, we generally print out a traveler from Business Central, but that could be a label on your components. You might have an item label to track that through the facility. Or if you don't want to do barcoding, you can do manual time entry. So that means touchscreen or mouse and keyboard or whatever you want to do, where you have no paperwork, no barcodes, anything like that. We have that capability as well. We do quality inspections, work instructions, linked documents, all of those sorts of things that you'll see in the demo. But I wanted to also point out that we support not just production orders. We support production orders, jobs, service orders, fixed assets, and non-productive time. So pretty much anything that's happening in the shop floor, we can capture detail on. Okay. We also do consumption and output from the shop floor interface if you want. And for some customers that we have, we also have project-based approval. So we have a number of people actually using this for, within professional services. And that's if you're doing, sort of an ETO or an MTO type of situation where you have engineering time, maybe commissioning time, all those sorts of things, and you've got a project, we can actually use this to manage that project through the job or whatever you like. And you can have project manager-based approvals versus just supervisory approvals. So you have a combination of those. And the approvals are all exception-based, so it makes it very easy to, approve the time if you want to have that approval stage and get it through the system. And then, of course, the reporting, the analysis, things like routing analysis. How much did my actual time deviate from my expected time, and what was the statistical significance of that deviation? We've got those types of reporting things built into the solution. All right. Now, how do we run this thing on the shop floor? Lots of different options. We found recently that the Chromebooks are what people put out there. They're a very cheap little laptop style device, runs a browser, US dollars, it's $100 to $200 for one of these things. You throw it out there and away you go. But tablets are also getting more popular as well, an Android or Windows tablet. Doesn't run on iOS, unfortunately, but Android or Windows tablets will work as well. We prefer the larger screens though, because you do want to present, a fair amount of information sometimes to the users, drawings or videos and things like that. So the larger screens tend to be better. So, again, we see the Chromebooks or those types of things being used. And here's an example of a screen out in an actual shop. This is actually one of our oldest installs. So that at the time this picture was taken, this was maybe 10 or 11 years old, as far as how long that terminal had been out there. And you can see the type of hardware they're using, just a little scanner, They've got a thin client PC out there, so no moving parts. They can cover it in sand if they want to, and it'll work. And this laminated sheet of barcodes. And that sheet of barcodes, there are things like fixed assets, if you've got somebody doing maintenance at that system, or non-productive time, like they're doing cleanup or a break or something like that, you know, those types of things, to make it very quick and easy to do data entry. And I'll show you how that works if you're using the barcodes. If you're not, no problem, I'll show you that as well. Now, let's talk about deployment. So it runs in a browser, which means each terminal does not need an application installed, other than the browser, of course, but there is an application that we install on the system that all those terminals communicate to, and it manages the communication of Business Central. So it makes it very quick and easy to get set up. So if you've got 50 or 100 terminals within the environment, they all talk to one central application that then manages all the authentication and everything to Business Central. And that way you're able to keep control of that on premises instead of host it. But if you want it in Azure or something like that, this app can be there as well. All right. Now, with that, as I get into the demo, this is the type of barcode I'm going to be scanning. You know, we've got an employee badge. This helps us identify, well, this identifies the employee to the system, because we track time based on either the employee or the work center or the group of employees. If you've got a production cell or something like that, we can capture time against work center, machine center, employee group, those types of things. But this helps us identify who we're dealing with at the shop floor. And this is the sample production order that gets printed with shop floor. We've got a barcode for setup time and a barcode for runtime. And again, if you don't want to use barcodes, you don't have to, but that's where we're going to start. All right, so let's jump into the demo and see what this thing looks like. So I'm in the browser here. And by the way, this is, again, just a web application. You have access to this. You're able to change the skin, change the look and feel on this using, you know, standard web stuff like CSS and everything else. And away you go. Now, the way I've got it set up is I do have employees scanning their badges to log in. If you're going paperless, you can still have them scan their badge because it makes it easy to access the system, or you can have them just type in their ID. You can turn that on. But as a scanning approach, all I do as an employee is I walk up to the terminal. So that maybe this is a shared terminal. Maybe I have a welding work center or something where I have 20 people sharing this terminal, or I have a machining center or injection molding center where I've made one terminal that services 4 or 5 machines and 4 or 5 different operators. Well, I can have a central terminal that they can just walk up, identify themselves, and start their work. Now, if you do have a dedicated terminal, like one tablet or one PC or whatever it is per machine, we can just leave it unlocked. Once they clock in for the day, it stays unlocked under their ID. But for me, I'm going to walk up, I scan my badge, so it just went beep. It shows me all the work I've done so far today, which is nothing. I just clocked in now, and now I need to tell the system what I'm about to do. So if you do have those barcodes, so if, you know, the production order shows up at my station to tell me this is what I need to do, or there's a pallet of whip that I grab and it's got a traveler on it, I grab it and I scan it, or there's a barcoded label on the component that I'm working on, I could scan that. But I'm going to go ahead and scan a barcode for the production order. And as soon as I do that, it shows me the production order, the line number, the operation, all the details here, and a few other things that I'll talk about in a moment. But from an operator perspective, that's all I had to do. Identify myself, beep the operation barcode, and I'm done. So I always joke, it's like the old Roadrunner cartoons. I go beep, beep, and I run off and I do my work. There's no tapping the screen. There's no switching views. It's beep, beep, and I'm done. So if you have paper out there already, it's perfect. I go beep, beep, and I run off and I do my work. Now, what if I don't have these barcodes to scan? Well, ideally, we still want to use the employee badges. It's just a barcode you can put on an existing ID badge or print that report out of Business Central on cardstock and put it in a clip-on badge holder. So the badges are still nice to identify yourself at the terminal. So if I scan in here as somebody else, so now I clocked in as Linda here, and Linda doesn't see her time card to start with, and she sees a different view to start with. And we can set up those views based on the terminal you're at, based on the employee, based on an employee group, all of those sorts of things. And what Linda is seeing here is what we call the dispatch list. And this is all the work that's coming up at her specific work center for the next hour or day or whatever you've set up in the system. So if you look here, I'm going to go in, well, actually I'll do the work center number. So these are all the columns. There's a whole bunch of columns you can hide or show, and you can make that globally default or per operator or whatever you like. But here we are. she's filtered down on Work Center 100. So this is all the work that's coming up at Work Center 100. And you can also go in and assign work to specific employees as well. So if we want to set it up so that when she clocks in, she only sees the work that's assigned to her, you can set that up as well. But this is where we get into the touch screen, right? So typically on a tablet, the view, you know, you're going to have larger text and everything else. So I can come in here and from here with a touch screen or mouse and keyboard, I can say, you know what, I want to start on this activity here. I tap on it, I tap clock on, and it's the same as scanning a barcode. It's just I'm now tapping the screen instead of going beep beep. All right, so that's how we manage the sort of the touch screen or the paperless interface. We have both for jobs. So here's all my job tasks. I can tap, clock on. So here I've got a production order. Here I've got a job. Tap, tap, we're good to go. Or I can use the barcodes to scan. So I'm just going to reset my zoom level here on the browser, and I'm going to switch back to me. So here we're in here as Linda. I'm going to scan my badge and switch back to me. So, you know, I scanned this in. I said, I've started this activity. I come back an hour later. I've completed it. And now I need to start my next activity. So all I have to do is come in and scan the next activity I'm working on. And it automatically calculates the amount of time I spent on the prior activity and starts my next activity. Now, this is a non-productive code, and you can create whatever you like there. And again, you can enter these with the touch screen as well. But this non-productive code can be, you know, waiting for work, safety meeting, sweeping, anything you like, breaks, all those sorts of things that you can have people record time against. You don't have to go to that level of detail, but it's very easy for the operators and the employees on the shop to record that time, because by scanning a barcode, they're automatically dealing with whatever prior activity they were on. Now, you can also set it up so I could come in here and type in the time if you allow them to do that. So in other words, if they're working on one thing all day, they scan the barcode at the end of the day, or choose the production order at the end of the day, type in their time, and they're good. Now, and this, by the way, is in hours. You have the ability to record time in you know, minutes, days, hours, whatever you like, and that again can be set per operator, per station. So maybe shorter operations you record in minutes, and longer operations you record in hours. That's no problem. And speaking of shorter operations or batching operations, we have the ability to batch production orders together. So if you have a paint booth or laser cutter, or you know, maybe it's a saw operation where each operation is a few minutes apiece, I can scan in 20 production orders simultaneously, work on that batch of production orders, clock off once, and it'll split the time proportionally across all those production orders. Okay, so for things that you are executing simultaneously, it handles that perfectly. And really, there are very few, actually, I don't know of any situations in a shop that we haven't run into and built a solution around. So any type of labor that you want to capture in the shop, we have the ability to do that. Now, that's the labor side of it. If we go over here, obviously we've got the bill of materials. You can hide and show these fact boxes if you like. The bill of materials, this can just be informational, or you can actually use this to do your point of use consumption. So I can come in here and load up, and we can set it up to automatically have the quantities in here, and I just register, or you can come in and manually enter quantities. Now, these have already been backflushed, but I can record additional consumption for scrap or whatever I like. If any of these components are lot tracked or serial tracked, I can scan those lot numbers or serial numbers in, or just type them in. So we can do that point of use consumption. We can also do output and scrap. And when we do the output, we can do intermediate output or finished goods output. And we can capture quality information when we do that output as well. And I'll show you that in a sec. Over here, we've got work instructions. So these are, all this information, by the way, is real time with Business Central. There's no separate database or anything else that we deal with. All of this data is in Business Central and it's real time. So when I clocked onto this production order, you know, I can go onto that production order and I can see exactly who's working on it by name, when they started, when they stopped, how much time, all of those sorts of things associated with it. These work instructions just come from the standard comments on the routing or the production order routing line, or the production order itself or the item. So we can come in here, list any details that you want to see. You can extend this to show statistics about the production order, all that kind of stuff. And by extend, I mean it's just configuration. You can go in there and show additional information there as well. And beyond that, we're also able to do things like show an item picture if that's important to people. And more importantly is the record links, where we can come in and show assembly diagrams, Excel sheets, link right back into Business Central from here if you want, videos, whatever you want to link here. And one comment on this links is great. This is a good example of where you might want to use Doc Extender, because Doc Extender is a free drag and drop tool. And if I have that installed, I just drag and drop my drawings onto the item, and bang, they're immediately available in Shopfloor if these employees have access to that SharePoint folder that we dropped into from Doc Extender. Okay, anyway, so those are the links. And then we also have the ability to do quality capture. So what this allows me to do is go into Business Central, define a data entry form for each item or for each work center or a combination of them or whatever you want to do. And I can come in and capture whatever details I want, including tolerances and all those sorts of things right here on the shop floor. So I can do this on an intermediate operation, or I can do this when I record my final output. So when I record my final output, it can pop this up and ask me for all of this kind of detail. Right, so this description here would be things like length, width, height, grade, you know, current draw, moisture content, whatever you want to do. And you can set this up to have you know, drop-down lists, lookups to other tables within Business Central. You can set tolerances in there, right? So a 6 is a fail and a 5 is a pass, that type of stuff. So very flexible, a good way to capture additional information. It's like a data entry form you get to define per operation, per routing, whatever you want to set that up for. You can have as many of those as you like. All right. So that's the basics of sort of the user interface. Again, the simplest way to use the system is it's the beep beep approach if you have paper. If not, you have the ability to use touchscreen or mouse and keyboard input. But again, if I'm just going to lock the screen here, again, if you do have paper out there on the shop floor already, or if your customers have that, the ideal way is just put a barcode on their traveler or use the traveler from Shopfloor Insight, and you're good to go. Because I walk up, I go beep, and then I go, you know, beep, and I start that. Now, one other quick thing, when I was talking about quality, we also have the ability to do things like capture rework time. So if you have in-process rework where, you know, I'm redoing this assembly, I did it up here earlier, but I'm redoing it now because there was some sort of problem with it. What I can do is I'm still recording my time against that production order and operation and everything else, but I'm going to flag this as a rework activity, and I'm going to blame engineering for it. And what that lets me do is now report on what the root causes of the rework are in the shop. And rework is very expensive. This feature alone often pays for the cost of the software, because a lot of people don't know how much rework time they have. You know, something was supposed to take 2 hours, or 2 hours, let's say, and it took 4 hours. Why? Well, very easily as an operator, I can indicate that it was an engineering problem or a material defect or you know, equipment failure or something like that, capture that time, and now I can go and rectify those problems by doing that sort of daily or weekly reporting on my rework time, because rework is expensive. If I spend 2 hours reworking this, that's costing probably 6 hours of time, right? 2 hours for the rework, 2 hours for lost productivity, 2 hours for the time I did it the first time, plus all the QC time, everything else. Being able to capture that easily, you know, again, often pays for the software just on its own, let alone all the data entry and everything else. All right, so that's the basics, right? It's beep beep, or again, if you don't have that, I can come in, type in my user ID, or just scan my badge, choose what I want to work on, you know, tap on the screen, tap clock on, and I'm good to go. Exactly the same. And type in a production order number, so you can, if you want to type in a production order number or a job number or whatever else, you can do that as well, no problem. All right, now again, all of that is real time with Business Central. Inside Business Central, we have time card approvals, we have, you know, the time and attendance capabilities, so reporting on, you know, the people's time. We have exception reports that tell us, you know, did they show up late? Did they show up when they weren't scheduled? Did they miss a shift? All of that time and attendance is there. All of that detailed time card approval is available, and it's exception based. So if you have 20 people reporting to you, it's a few minutes to do the time card approvals because you're only dealing with the exceptions. Things like, was the runtime too long? Did they forget to do something? Was the output too high? All of those types of exceptions that you can record in the system. I won't go through the setup. There are a ton of different options. And again, you can set it up per employee, per group, per station, all of those types of things. Very extensible, so you can plug in your own code to do almost anything. So for costing, as an example, we manage overtime costs. I lied. So I started talking about setup. So let me just show you really quick on part of the setup, some of the things that you can do. So there are a ton of options. Most of it, you know, you install it, you run the setup wizard and you use the defaults. But we can do things like capture overtime costs on production orders, right? And calculate that overtime and put that cost right on production orders. We've got all sorts of different things. Again, we do the jobs, we do service, we do all of those sorts of things. We've got the payroll portion and client configurations and everything else. So there's a lot of things we can do to configure it and tailor it without having to do really any customizations or anything like that at all. All right, so how am I doing for time? I've got 2 minutes left, I think. All right, so if you have any additional questions about this, you know, you can go to the website Shopfloor for Dynamics, or come to the main website and contact us. We've got a little chat window you can use there, or check out the online videos. So there are demos of the software online as well. And the knowledge base has a lot of detailed information and a lot more videos on specific things like setting up colors and all the things that you need to do to set up the Shopfloor interface if you want to use something different than the standard configuration. All right, I think I will end it there. Lon, it's over to you again.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. I don't see any questions in the chat. So now if you guys have time, have any questions in mind, then you can put that on the chat. Now I'd want to start the panel discussion. So I'll call on Martin to kind of lead the discussion. And for the other panelists, maybe you can unmute so that we can hear you as well.
Yeah, thank you, Larvin, and thank you, Ben, Matt, and Mark for showing us your awesome products today. So for all the people who watched all the presentations, just one thing, in case you saw the content, you have the contact details now, but if you saw something that you found very interesting, where you want to go into a deeper demo with either Ben, Matt, or Mark, and you're unsure how to reach them, you can also let us know. So put your request for an in-depth demo of one or more of these solutions, put it into the chat pane here, and then we will definitely make sure we get you in contact with the guys who presented. So I would like to wrap up the event today with asking a few questions that I prepared up beforehand, and that also I came across from our perspective as a company being mostly focused on scheduling. So when we discuss scheduling with our customers, then of course Shopfloor execution, Shopfloor data collector are always topics that we are confronted with. And one of the reasons to run this webinar is that when we get asked for a Shopfloor solution next time, we can say, hey, by the way, you can research AppSource, or you can just watch the recording of this webinar, and then you get 3 examples of great and different solutions that you can watch and then pick the one that resonates and helps you best. And so when we get confronted with Shopfloor, we from time to time get questions that are hard to discuss or to answer for us. And I would like to take the opportunity now to ask these type of questions that we hear. And I want to do it in a way that I ask a question, then I will always call one of you and then let the others comment and reply or add in an order that I will call for, so that each of you has the right or the pain to give the first answer, and then the others can just comment or add. So the first question that I would like to add in your point of view and from your experience as a Shopfloor expert, is a Shopfloor solution predominantly a tool to capture data from the shop floor, or is it a solution to manage the shop floor execution? So what's your view on this, Ben?
I'll jump in if I may. I think I see less interest in capturing actual times. I think the accountants like it. I think the operations guys aren't always quite so keen, because they have to sell it to the shop floor operatives that there's a very good and valid reason for doing this. I think obviously certainly what it is that you need to make and confirming that you've made it is the key bit.
And Ben, what's your view on it? Is shop floor more to capture the data, or is it more to manage the shop floor?
Well, it's managing, I think, is the key.
Okay.
Yeah, the capturing the data is part of that process. Yeah, for me, it's more about managing the process and the flow.
And Ben, how do you see it?
I see it as what we have tried to produce in our shop floor solution is 80% shop floor management, but we also do all the data collection, of course. So, the strange thing is that a recent Microsoft survey has concluded that only about 30% of all manufacturing companies today are making proper data collection. It's interesting. And then when we talk about the companies planning their execution, it must be even less. But what we try to sell and what we sell is shop floor planning. And of course, we also do the data collection. But we try to make planning interesting.
Okay, that's an interesting point. So, Mark, how do you see this from your experience with your partners and customers?
Yeah, and it's a good question. It really depends on how you define, managing the shop floor. So, I mean, data collection is an important part of that. You can't manage if you don't understand what's going on. So things like being able to ensure your routings are accurate by knowing your actual times match what you're expecting. That drives all the way up into planning. You can't use production scheduling if your routings aren't correct. If you think something is going to take 1 hour and in reality it's taking 5 hours, that is going to cause you significant issues. So I think it goes hand in hand. Now, managing from a sort of a shop floor interface, we don't really see that. We did actually have tools that allowed us to, graphically see everything within shop floor and do some management from within shop floor. And we ended up pulling it out and people just stay in Business Central to do sort of the management aspects and use the shop floor primarily for data collection. But again, it depends what you mean by management. Recording output, recording consumption, quality entry, all of those sorts of things are data collection, but they're also managing, what's happening within the production process to some extent.
So I actually like what you said in terms of having the routings defined on the one hand and then doing the shop floor data collection and then compare what was initially on the routing and what was done on the shop floor. Let's assume we have a brand new Business Central customer. They decided to go for manufacturing and a shop floor solution from the start. So, and they may have some data, but also obviously as they are new, they will lack some data. So would you recommend them to define routings with concrete times in it from the very beginning? Or would you recommend them to define just the routing steps, then collect shop floor data, analyze them, and then add like the typical times later? How do you handle this with your customers?
Yeah, it'll really depend, I think, on what they're after. But ideally, it would be as routings as close as possible to what they want. But there are people that create one operation and they just record all their time against that until they're more familiar with the solution. Not recommended, but ideally have all the operations with at least somewhat representative times, so that when they're using, the production scheduler, VAPS, those types of things, that they get a representative view of what their capacity is going to look like, once they've scheduled those orders. I mean, if we've got 0 times on the routings, you can't look at that schedule. You don't know what your demand and capacity is going to look like, what your load and capacity is going to look like. So yeah, representative times initially, and then tailor those as you get real world feedback. BI is a massive business, right? Power BI, everything else. And the whole point of that is being able to accurately measure what's going on in the real world so that you can adapt. And that's really what shop floor data collection provides, in addition to the costing and blah, 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 everything else that it gives you, right?
Matt, how do you do this?
I can only agree with Mark. Data discipline is a nice thing, and basically this here needs to be in place if we want to use these nice systems we have all created. So otherwise you are in a bad situation. So we need some kind of at least very correct data, whether it's the bill of materials or routings or routings, times and so on. Otherwise we cannot do anything. And the more advanced the solutions become, then the need for correct data increases at all times. So that's a necessity, I think.
I'd agree with both, Martin. Routings, you need something. You can't start with nothing. I think the typical new Business Central customer that we see might have something. Often they don't have much. They'll always have the bill of materials, but routings tend to be a bit lower down on the priority list. So they need something, and then use it to capture the actuals to build that data. Don't spend months trying to build it. Put it live. Put something rough cut in to begin with. Use the system to build that data, and take it from there.
And when they start collecting data, then also especially for those customers who are new, I see like two group of customers. The one, they go really detailed, so they whatever on their shop floor solution or with some manual posting, they start the operation and then they track progress, like we saw also in one of your demos, and then they report partial quantities and then they report the operation as finished. And then there are other customers I see, they would never start an operation, they would just like post when the operation is finished. So what do you recommend your clients and why? Should they post just when the operation is finished, or should they start it and then post whatever partial quantities and then post when it's finished?
I think it depends upon the manufacturer. I think there's no one right answer to that.
Okay, so if it depends on the manufacturer, then can you give me examples where you would, for which type of manufacturing you would recommend the one, and for which type of manufacturer you would recommend the other?
I guess when you get in more process manufacturing, it gets a bit more, it's very different, because if you and it depends upon, are you building something that takes 3 weeks to build compared to something that takes 4 minutes to build? If you're processing a large volume regularly, many production orders, then transactionally it can get difficult to start it, stop it, output it. So I think longer lead time, longer processes are probably more akin to capturing times as well as quantities, of course.
Yeah, we also see that in somewhat the culture of the company as well. Sometimes they have, to be polite, a less than diligent workforce that really don't want to use the system and try to avoid it. So in a case like that, if they have the option to, at the end of the day, record their time versus, as they go, then sometimes that's the deciding factor. They just go at the end of the day, these are the 3 things I worked on today. And they record their time at that point versus, as they're processing it in real time. Yeah, and otherwise I do agree. The things that have the longer times, process manufacturing was mentioned, but even things like welding. If I'm a welder and I'm working on something for 6 hours, maybe it doesn't really matter actually if I clock on, clock off, but I'm going to do that at the end probably rather than, at the beginning or throughout the day.
Ben, any thought from you on this?
I have a small comment on this. Let us say that the Microsoft people are right when they say that only 30% of all the manufacturing companies collect data today. Then what they also say, these companies, they must have a lot of money, or they will soon stop because of competition. The case is that many companies today, what is called their indirect cost is as high as 40 or even 50% of the production cost. And there are a lot of companies, they are not unique with what they produce, unique in a way that other companies can produce what they produce. So I think that data collection and shop floor management, it can reduce all these indirect costs. It's very easier than trying to seek more turnover or sell more. So apparently it seems like we have a good mission, all of us, that and hope that people will be a little bit more wise out there, I think.
I totally agree that the productivity and the efficiency gain that come with shop floor solutions are huge. And by the way, of course, we claim the same for our scheduling tool. So let me come to a trick question. And well, this can be like a typical hen and egg question. So what is your view? Should customers implement shop floor first so that they make sure that operations run smooth and then take care for scheduling? Or should they implement scheduling first so that they better know what to operate in which sequence and afterwards take care for shop floor? So what do you think? What should be first? And I know that it's a trick question, but I thought it's fun to have a discussion on this.
Sure. I can jump in, I guess, but you know, I don't think you can implement scheduling well without having shop floor. So at minimum, they should probably be done, you know, close to the same time. I shouldn't say that. You can implement scheduling just fine without shop floor, as long as the information coming back into Business Central is timely and accurate, right? So you could do manual entry and into Business Central and work just fine with scheduling without having any shop floor data collection, as long as you're on top of it. The shop floor data collection obviously simplifies that. It makes it a lot easier to get that information back in for the scheduler to utilize.
Ben, Matt, anything to add?
Yeah, I could add that data collection is very important, and this could lead the way to better shop floor management, managing your orders. And I think also this is very important, that the two things go hand in hand. You cannot do the one without the other.
Yeah, I'd agree there. They're both required. If the manual process is done timely, then yeah, I agree that the scheduling you could do first. I'm sure we've all seen so many where you know it's going to be 2 days before the information gets updated. I think it depends on the manufacturer as well, because the speed and volume at which the throughput's going through, some of them have to have it. And generally, I'd say, you know, what's the downside of doing shop floor capture?
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. So, and by the way, I'm not surprised that 3 shop floor experts say shop floor first, and I don't want to get into discussion right now or yet. But no surprise, that also confirms, by the way, what we see talking and working with our customers. Oftentimes, when scheduling comes to the table, then a good shop floor solution already exists, and there is a good reason for this, or there are many good reasons for this, and you just confirmed that this should be this is a good approach. The other thing that I want to come back to, and this is something that a phrase that Mark early on used, is that oftentimes also the culture of a company has an impact on how times are recorded, how people deal. And he came from the recording and the data collection part. But now let's look at the impact of the company culture on the execution part of it. And again, when we work then with scheduling customers and they have a shop floor system in place, then I see again two type of companies, and they seem to have different cultures. So the one type of company, they say, okay, whatever we have scheduled, we have built a schedule, and every worker on every machine knows what to do today. So we have a schedule in place, and everybody knows what to do today. And then I see companies who actually see the work order list as something that the worker must work on in the given sequence. And then I see other type of companies who kind of push the work for today to the operators, to the workstation, and then say, this is what you need to get today, but you have the authority to decide what to do in which order. You just need to get it done today. So how do you handle this type of question with your customers and within your solution? Do you give the freedom to the operators to decide which production order to work on in which sequence, let's say, for example, today? Or is it that you give them a list and they have to execute strictly following the sequence of that list?
I have a comment on that, Martin.
Absolutely.
In many companies, they talk about job enrichment, at least here in Denmark, and this means that you have a group of, let's say, 5 people. They are taking care of their kind of work. They have formed a work center or in Business Central, and we have these 5 people. And these 5 people, for instance, now I can only mention our own system. They go into our system and say, what are we supposed to produce before Friday night we leave for weekend? And then they can, you take this, and they can decide, share all the work between them, and they can see we must do some 55 hours this week. This is also, you could call it job enrichment, and but this is the way things go, and you also see that what is going away is all these shop foremen. Basically, they are in place for handing out papers and collecting papers again. But if you do not have any papers, then you must invent something new, and this could be this job enrichment thing. And this is also the way many companies use our solution.
Matt, how do you see this with your customers? Okay, Ben, sorry.
Yeah, okay, no, I'm done.
Yeah, okay.
I think there's different organisations and cultures. I see some where it's very much driven by the sales teams, the customer front end, whatever the customer wants, the customer can have. That tends to drive a lot of chaos in production.
Good word.
I think it's having somebody strong with the organisation, say, look, if we actually have some rules and plan it in, then actually generally the customers are going to get it quicker. But if we just react every day, it's just going to be chaotic, and that causes a lot of problems that I see. You get businesses where they're constantly behind on delivery, so they're always fighting and always, again, being pushed by customer demands because they're late. But the opposite scale, I was at a customer the other day, and an average production order takes 7 or 8 months, and there's 450 lines on the routing. That's planned in ultimately and doesn't really change, and is quite well controlled. So I agree. If you can plan it in and give some flexibility, that generally the people doing the job know the best way and sequence of doing some of those things and know some of the benefits they can get from changing the sequence, as long as it's within the boundaries of still meeting the requirements of when it's got to go out the door.
Mark, any final thought from you on this?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Matthew there. Like, ideally, they'd follow the schedule. I mean, to answer your question, we allow them to decide how they want to execute, whether they're forced to follow the schedule or we just leave it wide open and they can do what they want. But the challenge is when you have a schedule and you have people doing what we call local optimization. In other words, they're sitting there and the schedule calls for them to work on production order 1 next, but they see, oh, there's product here for production order 3, I'm going to start that. That has a ripple effect. And, then the person waiting at the next station for production order 1 has to now choose something else to work on because the first person didn't deliver what they needed. So allowing, people at individual work centers to choose what they're working on without following the schedule if one is in place generally causes more work in progress, so more WIP sitting on the shop floor because things get chaotic, as Matt said, and you end up missing deliveries, you've got more work in progress, higher costs, more confusion. Generally speaking, if there is a good schedule in place, then people should be following it. And it is always a challenge because, people in the shop want to be independent, they want to be working. If, their predecessor operation is delayed for 5 minutes, they're going to try and find something else to work on, and that is generally a bad idea.
Okay, so especially some factories will work on, we call it peacetime in the UK. I'm not sure what it is around the world, but when they get paid in effect per part that they make, a lot of their pay is driven on what they actually make.
Exactly. Yep.
So
yeah.
I asked all the questions that I prepared, and I asked all the questions that came from the listeners and the attendees that we had to this event. So I would like to cordially thank you, Ben, Mark, and Matt, for taking a lot of time today to first show us and the folks on the webinar here today your solutions, and then discuss with me some of your shop floor best practices and experiences. This was very insightful for me, and I think it was insightful for all the others here. So thank you very much for taking time today, and I hope we meet again soon and have another lively discussion on Business Central Manufacturing. Thank you, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And thanks for organising, Martin.
You have to thank Larvin. He did all the work. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you in our next webinars.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.